Right, hello and welcome live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. You're tuned into the week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson. Let's get straight into it. Right, we continue with our developing story at the Sawa. Residents of the mining town of Jagersfontein in the Free State are being evacuated. The mine dam has burst, causing flooding in parts of the town. Now, several houses at the nearby Charlesville residential area have already collapsed. The main road leading into the town is also reportedly flooded. Now, authorities are encouraging residents to leave their homes in order to save lives. But for more on this, on their work, perhaps we are joined by Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, founder of Gift of the Givers. A very good afternoon to you, Dr. Imtiaz. Thank you for joining us on the SABC. I know things are happening. It's a disastrous situation at this point. Perhaps you can just walk us through, what do we know thus far in terms of interventions needed based on the situation unfolding?
Good afternoon, Liesl. The situation is, to get explanation out of there is very difficult. We were speaking to a warrant officer, Nokia, who called us this morning, and he just said it's devastating. There's no water. Houses are being washed away. 3 bodies have been found. People are missing. Whole homes have collapsed. The water is everywhere. It's mining sludge. People can't go back to their homes anymore. And as in any disaster, and in this case more especially, there's no drinking water anywhere in the town. So water is the primary requirement in the area itself. Secondly, of course, all people can have to move away from their homes, so they're going to need meals, cooked meals. And a local church has offered to open their doors for the people from Charlesville and surrounding area, but I'm not sure if one church is going to be enough. Because according to some of the farmers we've spoken to, there's more than 9,000 people who live in the area. Of course, all 9,000 people haven't been affected. But in terms of the water supply, everything's been affected. The network tower is knocked down, so this communication system is a problem. But load shedding, electricity is a problem. And of course, people can be in the open area are going to need blankets and mattresses, besides the food items and energy food. So, and we're still waiting for more information. The premier of the province called us for assistance. The disaster agency called us. The farmers called us. Community leaders called us. So we got several calls from many people in the town itself. But everybody's got a problem with network. It's very, very difficult in terms of network. A lot of farmers have called and they're crying. All sheep have been washed away. Large numbers of sheep have been washed away. And the sheep are now drinking the sludge water, which is killing them after they drink the water. So it's a big crisis right now and a big challenge to get there and to supply it. But while saying that, our team's already busy preparing to get there in the next few hours.
So, Dr. Imtiaz, on that note, in terms of operations, what's it going to look like? You've spoken about how the area's been affected in terms of water, electricity, even the animals at large, communication towers. But the very inroads to get there, I mean, what routes should one avoid? How will you be getting in? What does that look like in terms of operations?
There are some access routes. The warrant officer Nokia told us there are some access routes. They said in the town they've set up a command center where the premier and other people will go. And from there, they'll direct us where to go. So there are access areas for which you can. They're moving people away from the area of the floods. So obviously, the people where they're taking them to, there has to be access to move those people. So wherever those people are moved to, there will be access to those people. You have, of course, access to the flood area or the mine dam disaster. That will be difficult. But wherever the people are rescued and taken to or encouraged to get out of their homes, we can then take the supplies there. And we told one lady, how come you're managing to talk to us? And she said, I'm fairly high up. My network is working here. I can see the whole town, everything is affected. And she said, all the money in the world and no water to buy. So that has become the number one priority. So the warrant officer said, look, and he can't talk to us now. I don't know whether it's the network or his phone died. It's very difficult to say, but we are speaking to several people. But whilst we're waiting for networks to come back, we're already preparing. And, we will find a way to get there. If it means to have to fly stuff, use the helicopters to get in, we'll be able to do that. It's not impossible for us. As I'm speaking to you, we're loading stuff in Bethlehem. And again, the priority items that I told you, we're loading in Gqeberha and in Graafrenet, and our trucks are from Cape Town. Because they're coming from different destinations, one will come in and the second one will follow and the third one will follow and the fourth one will follow. And even if you have to buy stuff from nearby areas, we would do that. But the whole process is in operation already.
All right, just very quickly, Dr. Imtiaz, you say information is still trickling in. So if people want to get in touch, support, perhaps in terms of donations or even skill sets that are needed for both humans and animals. How do they get in touch? What is the best way for them to do so?
They can call our toll-free line, but it's not going to be available today, and we don't jam our other disaster lines right now. Can they leave a message on our social media pages or send us an email? The best thing is to send an email to info@giftofthegivers.org or leave messages on our social media pages. We'll be making press releases there, and then we may leave a phone number that they can contact there. But the main disaster people involved, we're not going to leave numbers, otherwise we're going to get too caught up and we won't be able to do what we're supposed to do.
All right, thank you very much for that update, Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman. Again, Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman giving us the update on what's transpired this morning. We heard residents of the mining town of Jagersfontein in the Free State are being evacuated. The mine dam having burst, causing floods in parts of the town. Dr. Imtiaz highlighting some of the more pertinent needs facing both, the residents in the area as well as animals, water, electricity. There's the issue of communication as the towers are down, and perhaps also temporary accommodation and meals that will be needed for the immediate future. Again, a developing story. We'll continue to monitor and bring you the latest as it unfolds. Again, thank you to Gift of the Givers founder Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman for giving us that update. In other news at this hour, the Center for AIDS Program Research is currently evaluating new TB diagnostic systems that will link patients with their results instantly. The aim of the 7th South African TB Conference at the Durban ICC, which starts on Tuesday, will see Professor Kochi Naidu, Caprice's head of TB and HIV treatment research, who actually says that the new test will also revolutionize the diagnosis of drug-resistant TB. The latest data points to 10 million new global TB infections annually. Caprice says South Africa is among the top 30 countries for TB infections.
TB is caused by bacteria that spreads from person to person through the air. In most cases, the disease is curable with the right treatment. But a form of drug-resistant TB may occur when the bacteria becomes immune to the drug. According to experts, South Africa has about 7,000 drug-resistant TB patients every year. The two strains are extensively drug-resistant TB known as XDR-TB and multi-drug-resistant TB, MDR-TB. Experts say both are treatable but require a quick diagnostic test and a complex treatment regimen. In 2013, government introduced a new test that can produce results in less than an hour at a centralized laboratory. But experts say the centralized location means that a patient still has to wait days for the results to filter back to their clinic manually.
The patients have to expectorate a sputum. The sputum will go to the laboratory. The laboratory deals with hundreds of thousands of specimens each day. They need to generate a result. The result, we don't have a secure electronic mechanism to dispatch results to facilities and to patients. So with COVID, we got very spoiled. We got a COVID PCR result on our mobile phones. But with TB, you need to go to a facility to access a test and access a result.
Naidu says a new and quicker test has been endorsed by the World Health Organization. Caprice is currently running a 2-year study on the test to evaluate its efficacy when implemented in diverse settings.
Now we have a new test that we are evaluating that not only tells you that you have TB, but also tells you about the drug resistance profile of your TB organism. It'll tell you whether you could take the ordinary TB treatment for drug-sensitive TB or whether you require a more complex second-line TB regimen for drug-resistant TB. In the past, we would wait anything from 20 to 42 days to get a result, but now this new diagnostic has revolutionized the diagnosis of drug-resistant TB in that we can get a test result within 80 minutes.
Naidu says new candidate vaccines have also emerged in TB prevention.
So there are several candidate vaccines that have been that's being evaluated in the field, and the one that's really advanced is a vaccine called the M72AS01E. It's a bit complicated, doesn't have a sexy name as yet, but that vaccine was shown to protect half of those that received it in progressing to TB disease. And the importance is that that vaccine was shown to be effective in people living with HIV.
Naidu says hope remains for a breakthrough despite the setbacks caused by COVID-19. Bongani Gema, SABC News, Durban.
Right, in other news making headlines now, one of the people who were in the house when Senzo Meyiwa was shot and killed will take the stand at the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria on Monday. This comes as the trial of the 5 men accused of Meyiwa's murder continues. Meyiwa was at the home of Gladys Khumalo, singer Kelly Khumalo's mother. At the time of the incident, there were 7 people in the house: Kelly Khumalo, her sister Zandile Khumalo Gumede, as well as Longwe Twala, Gladys Khumalo, Meyiwa's 2 friends Tumelo Madlala and Mthokozizi Twala. For the first time, details of what happened in the house and the moments leading up to and after the 2014 killing are expected to be heard in court. This past week, cross-examination of the first and second witnesses, Sergeant Thabo Musia and Patrick Mthethwa, were of course concluded. Under close scrutiny was the manner in which the crime scene was handled. The Meyiwa family is expected back in court on Monday to hear firsthand what could have happened. The Senzo Meyiwa murder trial continues, again as I mentioned, in the Pretoria High Court on Monday. Oh, for more on this, we're going to be joined by Nthabiseng Dubazana, who is the Director and Attorney at Dubazana Attorneys, as well as a legal expert. Very good afternoon to you, Nthabiseng. Thank you for joining us here on the SABC.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just look at what are some of the things we can look out for as the trial continues tomorrow. Again, we heard what can we expect perhaps after Sergeant Mthethwa's testimony. What implications could a possible witness from within the house mean for the direction of the case?
So if indeed a witness from the house is going to be testifying, now we're going to understand how the event actually unfolded. So we're going to be exposed to how the break-in allegedly happened. We're going to be exposed to what happened as they came in, who had gun in hand, who then threatened who, and all of those things. So basically a step-by-step, so to speak, guide on what happened within the walls of that house on that day, to kind of tie in together with the forensic evidence or lack thereof that has been explained by the past 2 witnesses, and see if they can, tie into each other and also complement one another, and thereby giving us a way forward on how to determine whether or not the accused before the court were indeed the accused that were in the house. So things like, are they going to be able to identify the perpetrators who entered the house, and also compare them or confirm them rather as the ones that are sitting before the dock today. So that is basically what we're looking at in terms of Monday when we come in.
So with the issue of the second docket rather still hanging over the case, how would you weigh in on that? I'm asking that because the MP in Pretoria have been given a mandate to make a decision on that. How is it going to also impact dynamics going forward?
Seeing as we have gotten an indication that that docket is going to be decided upon once this current matter has been concluded, I don't know how it's going to impact this. It's unprecedented. I've never experienced this in practice before. Usually what happens is that if 2 different dockets are opened on the same case, once one has appeared in court and it has been established that there's another docket somewhere out there, then they combine them together. They call it conciliate. You conciliate then the dockets together and make it one, and then we continue with the case under one umbrella, under one case number, basically. So what is currently happening is unprecedented. I don't know how or what the thinking is from the NPA in waiting for one matter to conclude before dealing with another. And if the person that is testifying tomorrow is indeed one of the 7 who are mentioned in the docket whereby a decision is yet to be made, and they're being used as state witnesses, how will it then impact them when it comes to docket number 2? Will they be now in terms of section 204? Is that how will they be dealt with? 204 is when you've now basically turned state witness. Are they now the witness to the state or not when it comes to the second docket? Or I'm not sure exactly how the state is going to be dealing with this aspect going forward.
Well, it seems that there are more questions than answers at this point. And we also know that justice delayed is justice denied. I want to just recap what happened, over the past 8 years. Meyiwa was obviously shot and killed in 2014 at his girlfriend Kelly Khumalo's house in Vosloorus, Boksburg, the 26th of October. It's been years now since the death of Senzo Meyiwa, and no one has yet been held accountable for his death. So I'm rehashing this because just given the nature of criminal law and based on the chain evidence that has emerged during these testimonies, are we likely to see a conclusion here? Will justice be served? How would you weigh in on that?
I think because criminal law really is my favorite of the laws, it's not emotional, it is very technical. So if I can, even if the facts and the story behind what happened can be as authentic and as true as possible, but if the handling of the case, of the crime scene is not done correctly, in other words, chain evidence is broken. It can be chain evidence by virtue of collecting samples from the crime scene and eventually getting it to forensic. If we cannot establish what happened from beginning to end, already by virtue of that, my client is going to walk. If we cannot establish things like the ballistic reports and all of that, cannot tie them into the gun that was used on the day in question, by virtue of that, my client will walk, because you cannot confirm that the bullet and the casings found at the scene come from the same gun that was handled or found by one of the accused persons. And thus far, it doesn't seem like the gun was found in anyone's direct possession at the time. But then, the way that things were handled is very questionable, whether or not we're going to find a conviction on these current accused persons just based on chain evidence alone by virtue of cross-examination. And the other thing that disturbs me most in terms of criminal law and trials, the way they work, what happens is that when a witness is giving evidence in the dock, all the other witnesses are told to wait outside, so that you don't hear what your counterpart is going to say or is going to answer to cross-examination. So when you come in, with a fresh brain and not knowing what has happened prior to you entering. But in this case, it's not happening that way. Everybody has access to what is happening. Everybody is seeing what is transpiring, including the witnesses. And sadly, with the last witness, what we just saw, the documents that are being referred to are being put on the screen. Pictures are being put on the screens for everybody to see. That already puts a compromise, in my opinion, in the proceedings of how to deal with the trial in terms of criminal matters. I believe that witnesses the matter should not have continued online. That's my view on it. And because it's continuing online, most witnesses are going to be compromised. And already the attorneys for accused 1 to 4 was complaining that can this witness not come and testify because he was listening to what the previous witness was saying via radio. So it's a problem.
No, definitely. I think Tobani definitely objected to Sergeant Mthethwa testifying on the back of what you've just echoed here. And then just very briefly then, because of what has transpired and the manner in which you've weighed in, why do you think this case has taken so long? I mean, you've spoken about Sergeant Mthethwa's testimony, and the very manner in which he testified also came into question, the clarity with which he spoke, but also, what he did during the investigation process as well, which obviously then also shines a spotlight on the policing system at large, and the competency of the SAPS at this point for justice.
Well, as criminal defense attorneys, we thrive on those mistakes, I'm not going to lie. So we wait and see for the docket, because before we have the docket, we don't know exactly how to, prepare for the trial. But even if your client has given you as much information as possible, if we cannot tie it in with what is within the docket, it is useless to us. So once we see what is within the docket and the flaws are already there, we don't really focus on what happened in the sense of the actual crime itself. We focus on the chain evidence, because if chain is broken, there is no way any competent court is going to find my guys guilty. So by virtue of the testimonies that we have seen so far, Advocate Mthethwa has poked a lot of holes in the stories of both witnesses, and also the chain evidence is already put a question upon it. So already as that stands, we don't know if the witnesses who are going to come in the future other experts who can, maybe cover what these two have already done or messed up, and kind of make it look nice and shiny. But for right now, it doesn't look like the state has a strong case to find the accused persons guilty so far.
All right, Ntabi saying that's as much as we can rub our crystal balls at this point to look forward to what we can expect. But again, Tabi saying Dubazana is director and attorney at Dubazana Attorneys, just giving us a preview of what we can expect this as the Senzo Meyiwa trial continues tomorrow. Again, thank you very much to her for her time here on the SABC. We'll leave the conversation there, take a quick ad break. There's more on the other side when we return. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. The week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson, continues. Tomorrow, the 12th of September, marks 45 years since the brutal murder of Steve Biko. He died in police detention. Today, AZAPO is holding a rally in Ginsburg to commemorate his life. But for a discussion on the legacy of Steve Biko, we're going to be joined via Zoom by Velimbele Gasombisi, and he is an Afrocentric essayist and co-founder of the Afrocentric think tank. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the SABC.
Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity, Liesl.
I think let's just get straight into it. It has been 45 years since his passing, and year after year, his death is commemorated. But as we maintain intentionally to keep his honor and legacy alive, what more could be done to honor his legacy at this juncture, given our country's democracy 28 years later?
Yes, Liesl, I think the first thing is we must make a concerted effort to try and understand the essence of Steve Biko, right? Understand him for what he is, so that if we are to make determinations on how his legacy or ideas should be advanced, it must be based on a thorough understanding on what he represented, right? So it is important to then state that Steve Biko represented the idea, right, that Black people, not just in South Africa, but globally, should develop the capacity to interact or engage with the world on their own terms, right? Which meant that the central idea that he stood for, right, was Blackness as self-definition, right? Which then says, in the context of where we are today, we must look at the position that Black people occupy, not just in South Africa, but globally, because that was his main concern, the Black condition or the Black experience. And then we must look at those things that continue to undermine, right, the dignity and the worth of Black people in the world today, and how we as Black people should respond, informed by his philosophy of Black consciousness. Most importantly, we must also understand that Steve Biko's program or vision of Black consciousness was a program of liberation, right? So then the central question then becomes, to what extent has Steve Biko's program of liberation been advanced, compromised, or undermined, and where do we find ourselves? For me, that is one of the key questions.
All right, so perhaps before we look at how his program has been advanced, compromised, or even undermined, I want to just go back to the essence of the idea of Black consciousness, which you spoke about, which basically formed the antithesis to white supremacy, which is, the overall systemic issues that we're still facing today. And so we can have the discussions about freedom, but if we don't tackle the very, the very thing of white supremacy, obviously we're going to just be rearranging the chairs on the decks of the Titanic. And so in lieu of his legacy, how do we ensure that, this message is passed down and adequately understood for the younger generation, perhaps as time continues to move on, but the very struggles continue to perpetuate society, socio-economically, politically, mentally, psychosocially, and spiritually?
I mean, your observation is very apt, right? So understanding white supremacy is central to also understanding what Biko is about. And this is why it is important that in the context of the now, what we must understand is that Steve Biko was not a leader of an NGO, right? Or some kind of a pressure group. He was a leader of a liberation movement. And what then suggests is that anybody who is interested in advancing Steve Biko's ideas in the now must be somebody who is prepared to commit themselves to Black consciousness as a program for liberation, right? And amongst others, especially psychological liberation. What it then means is also, we must also then ask the question, Liesl, about, was the fight for liberation about democracy, right? Was the struggle a fight for democracy, or was it a fight for the right of the natives, right, to be masters of their own destiny and determine their own destiny? I think it was about the latter. So what has happened is that there is a lot of confusion that crept in along the way, that the struggle was reduced or made to be about democracy, right? When in fact, the truth of the matter is that all oppressed people fight primarily for national liberation. And that is really the thing that we must interrogate, right? That the reason why we have a lot of observations that talk about the deficiencies of the current political milieu, right? It is because we have been hoodwinked into accepting the notion of democracy versus the notion of liberation. And this is why there are so many deficiencies today, which you refer to as socio-economic inequalities. So there is a need, in my view, informed by Steve Biko's thinking, to not just interrogate the notion of democracy, but to actually return to the fundamental question of whether or not, right, the fight was for democracy or for liberation. And if it was for liberation, how do we then proceed to advance that program?
Well, Veli, on the back of what you're saying, as perhaps as we, look or conscientize ourselves beyond neoliberal structures that perpetuate society today. If we look at what Steve Biko stood for, and perhaps also, what his leadership style envisioned, encompassed, as we look at contemporary South Africa, given the dynamics that are unfolding, were he alive today, you spoke about, reliving or understanding how we advance, compromise, and even undermined what he stood for and what he advocated for. How would he weigh in on what is currently transpiring in South Africa on that front?
Well, listen, I always avoid trying to be a spokesperson for the people who are on the other side of life, except to say, in the case of Steve Biko, we are fortunate because he has left a rich legacy of literature, right? Yes. And one of the things that he sort of forecasted about where we find ourselves today. So one of his quotes, observations, which I wish to paraphrase, is where he says, if we were to only have a change in the faces of those who are in government, our society would run as in the same manner that it was run yesterday, right? And in that quote, Steve Biko was suggesting that for fundamental change or transformation to occur in the South African context, you need to have a fundamental change in the power relations, right, between oppressor and oppressed. And unfortunately, right, what happened in 1994 was not a change in the power relations. What you essentially had was simply, right, a change in the management committee, right, of the project of whiteness and European imperialism, but not a shift in the power relations. So his concern, right, would have been with the fact that there is a need to continue the project to have a fundamental shift, right, in the power relations, because everything that we are complaining about today, especially as the natives, has to do with the fact that we continue to be a dispossessed, marginalized, and conquered people, right? To make a graphic example, there is a World Bank report that was released in March this year. on poverty and inequality in South Africa, a World Bank report which states that in 2022, over 80% of the main financial assets in South Africa are in the hands of less than 10% of the population that constitutes the minority, right? So that was the focus of Steve Biko as per that quote in the 70s. And my view is the majority of the people who are in political leadership today are not concerned with changing the power relations between oppressor and oppressed. They seem to be more concerned with either integrating or managing the project of whiteness in South Africa. So he would direct us to what is fundamental.
Well, to also paraphrase Fanon, as we obviously look at the struggle continuing, it seems like economic emancipation in our life, in this current generation's lifetime, seems to be at the fore of what we're pursuing at this point. So as we look at the future, the young generation, for them to embrace what Steve Bantu Biko stood for, what more should be done? And perhaps as we look at the activities planned, is enough being done to commemorate his legacy and solidify, what his presence ultimately meant for the liberation of Black people around the world?
Well, yeah, first thing is I think we must give credit to the organizations and movements in the Black consciousness movement historically, right? They have made sure that the name, the ideas of Steve Biko are kept alive, and sometimes at great cost to their lives, right? So organizations like the Azanian People's Organization, AZAPO, which played an important role in keeping his name and ideas alive at a difficult time, and many others that came out later. Work that is done by people like Brother Andile Mngxitama, important work insofar as promoting the ideas and advancing the ideas of Steve Biko is concerned. So there are a number of organizations and movements that we must give credit for doing that. Even globally, groups like a tribe called Quest, artists like Simpiwe Dana, our own Taiwa Mulelekwa, and a very another wonderful group called Ipupo Likabiko. So there are a number of Black people and organizations that have done important work to keep his name and memory alive, and we must give credit to them. And Steve Biko is about the lived experience of Black people. So we must also allow Black people to interpret Biko, right, in the context of their own lived reality. And we must avoid being too prescriptive, right? Because in his very nature and leadership style, Biko was not prescriptive. And so it is good that we have a cross-section of organizations and individuals globally. One of the exciting things for me was to discover a few years ago that in Salvador, Brazil, there is an institute that has been established called the Steve Biko Institute in Bahia, which was an initiative of students and teachers at the university, right? So there are a number of ways in which we can do it. And I just think once we grasp his ideas, it is important that his ideas should permeate all facets of society, and we must not find them privatized or locked up in a small group of people. And that is really what I think would be one of the best ways of advancing his ideas in the now.
Veli, I want to thank you very much for your time here on the SABC. Thank you for echoing those sentiments. Again, the conversation continues. Aluta continua. But thank you very much for your time. Once again, Afrocentric essayist Veli Mbele ka Sombisi. Again, just remembering Steve Bantu Biko, rehashing his life and times, and really what more needs to be done to solidify his legacy amongst the next generation in South Africa. On that note, we've also seen that in Ginsburg today, AZAPO is holding a rally. Currently, this is to commemorate the life and times of Steve Bantu Biko. Again, our reporter Abongile Yankees is there. These are some of the live visuals coming through. Many political parties and political figures in attendance. Let's take you live there. right, so you can see a number of political parties, including the PAC, the UDM in attendance, also some of the alliance partners there, also just commemorating the life and times of Steve Bantu Biko. We're going to leave it there for now and continue to bring you more as it develops. But for now, let's take a quick ad break. There's more on the other side. Welcome back. The week ahead continues with myself, Liesl Wilson. In other news now, obviously it's Heritage Month and there's lots of activities taking place around the country. Tomorrow, in fact, marks the start of National Parks Week. The Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environmental Affairs is launching the national program at the Ochrabis Falls near Uppington in the Northern Cape Province. Minister Barbara Creecy is expected to deliver the keynote address at the event. But senior reporter Reginald Witboy and senior video journalist Ulrich Hendricks are live for us from the Ochrabis Falls. Reginald, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I know it's been a jam-packed activity-filled day. Perhaps you could just walk us through today's proceedings. Ultimately, what was the purpose of this initiative during Heritage Month?
Well, good afternoon to you, Liesl, and also to our viewers. While you are sitting there in the studio, we are taking a game drive out here at the Ochrabis National Park, and we know that this week, starting tomorrow, from tomorrow until Friday, South Africans actually have the opportunity to visit any of the 22 national parks in the country absolutely for free. All you need to do is to provide your South African identity document to gain access to these 22 parks. Now, yesterday we took a drive and we saw some giraffes, tortoises, but it's a picturesque area, Ochrabis. It's the Ochrabis Falls itself. It's not streaming so heavily though, but always a beautiful picture to see. But just to tell us about National Parks Week and about the Ochrabis itself, I'm joined by the parks manager at the Ochrabis National Park, Angela Isaacs. Angela, a very good afternoon to you and thank you for taking us on this drive. And I know many South Africans would like to visit these parks during this week. But why should South Africans specifically choose the Ochrabis National Park to come and visit?
Hi, Reginald. Hi, viewers. Yeah, I think to me it's one of the most beautiful parks that we have. Not only because I work here, but I mean I have been part of this area. I have been born and bred in this park. So people make use of this opportunity, come out to the park, not only to see the waterfall, but I think all of you must just take a game drive or drive into the veld this week and just come and see.
So it's about benefit.
Yeah, I mean the parks now also has a mandate to link with the community and to have links and partnerships and projects with the community. So especially our local community members, which is on our doorstep, they must really make use of this opportunity now, having organized taxis or transportation. Pack your bags, and come out to see our beautiful park.
And then also, can we find the?
We basically we've got beautiful giraffes. I think you were also lucky to see them yesterday. We've got kudu, we've got red hartebeest, we've got springbok. But unfortunately, we can't. It's not like a zoo where we can keep them in a corner. They're migrating all the time. But to us also, it's essential that people don't come here to when they take the game drive to expect that they will be.
Well, as Reginald Witboy, our senior reporter and senior video journalist Ulrich Hendricks, are of course enjoying the picturesque moments that game drive offers in Ochrabi Falls. Again, Reginald Witboy was in conversation with Angela Isaacs to speak about the importance of National Parks Week. Again, as we heard, it will be open for free to the public in line with tourism, with Heritage Month rather, to promote tourism in the country. And again, he was just giving us an update there. It's a pity that we had some technical issues, but we do wish them well as they enjoy, the game drive, and perhaps looking forward to what else we can expect as the week unfolds. Now, in other news making headlines now, the EFF in Gauteng is this weekend electing new leaders, with current Ekurhuleni Regional Chair Nkululeko Dunga becoming the EFF's Gauteng chairperson. The party's leader, Julius Malema, is expected to address the gathering later today. Let's take you live there now, perhaps to see what's currently transpiring.
We win the hearts, minds, and souls of our people. And therefore, what characterized a poor election performance in particular is a betrayal of the revolution and is tantamount to treason. It is a betrayal of our generational mission to fight for the return of the land and the economy, because it prolongs the poverty of our people and surrender them to the vultures who put them in squatter camps and make them live in inhuman conditions. It is on this background that this leadership of Gauteng is elected, with the constant uncertainty of the status quo in metropolitans, because our people have not given any political party a decisive mandate to rule. You are elected when our people have decided to leave the sinking ship known as the ANC, but they have not yet decided whether they will join you and form part of the revolutionary movement of Fanon, Marx, and Lenin. The material conditions are ripe for the EFF in Gauteng, but it is the EFF that has not woken up to the reality that our people are looking for an alternative. You have not come to appreciate the objective conditions in the economic hub of South Africa, which are practically demanding that the EFF assumes its rightful role as the weapon of the people. There is a political crisis in Gauteng, and what makes matters worse is that if this crisis is not managed correctly, then the entire country is influenced by a type of politics that is against the masses of our people and Africans in particular. The people of Gauteng are desperate for leadership, but they have not yet been convinced that such a character of leadership exists within the ranks of the EFF. A new layer has been elected now, and we need them to be able to respond to challenges of Gauteng. Comrades, the people love the EFF, and it is the role of the EFF to reach out to our people so that you convince them that you are the right collective. We need to orientate the leadership of Gauteng on the fundamentals of our struggle, because it is not on the basis of rhetoric that they will win the minds and hearts and souls of our people. But it is a leadership that is politically grounded, that will appreciate the difficult questions that are confronting the people of Gauteng and the EFF, and the people that can be in a position to explain the immigration question that characterized a lot of corners in Gauteng. Our people are being misled by the ANC that the problem in their lives begin with fellow Africans. This is an election tactic by ANC that has failed to give our people houses in Alexander after promising them 1 million houses in 2019. So those people who are looking for houses in Alexander, they are looking for houses from Zimbabweans. who have never promised them 1 million houses. But a man who promised them 1 million houses can visit Alexander tomorrow without any problem. There won't be any throwing of stones, there won't be burning of tires. If anything, the people of Alexander will be fighting, climbing on each other to reach out to the man who promised and never delivered to them 1 million houses. And when the man leaves and the problem remains, you, the people of Alexander, will now turn on Africans for your misery and your pain, yet you know where the headquarters of the ANC is. So we must, as Pan-Africanists, declare here and now that Africans are not our enemies, that our enemy is white monopoly capital, that our enemy is the owners of the means of production, that our enemy is those who stole our land and are still in possession of stolen goods, that Africans are in struggle with us to reclaim that which belongs to Africa. In Zimbabwe, the crux of the problem was the taking over of the land in 2000. Zimbabwe is not struggling because it did anything wrong except the takeover of the land. As a result, Zimbabwe is under sanctions and it's unable to supply the most basic needs of our people. So as Pan-Africanists, we have a responsibility to appreciate that Africans are not our enemies. Our enemy is white capital, including the ANC, is not an enemy. It's a tool that is used by the enemy to perpetuate the interest of the enemy forces. So instead of saying the ANC is an enemy, we must know that the ANC is like a used condom that will be dumped at any time once they finished using it, because they don't love the ANC. So it can be that when we fight with the ANC or whatever black formations, we now think that our differences with them are not reconcilable. Our differences with the ANC at some point will be reconciled and will be one big African family where all of us who are students of Marx, Lenin, and Fanon will appreciate that we are not enemies of each other. So it can be that because there are not enough beds in a country where there's too much corruption, and that the bed is taken by a Zimbabwean who's sick, we then attack the Zimbabwean who's sick. But the ANC should have known that there is a problem in Zimbabwe, and therefore strengthen the capacity of South Africa to accommodate, if needs arise, the people of Zimbabwe. You can't say there are not enough resources when there is too much corruption that is going on in the country. So that money that they are stealing could have actually bought more bed that we and our African brothers and sisters can share because we've got some resources. You must not behave like that rich aunt who always, when there are functions at home, behaves like she's the best of them all in the family, when one day we will need each other as family members. So we are family members with the Zimbabweans, the people of Lesotho and all of them. Those who come with crime must be isolated and be dealt with as criminals. Their nationality is not of significance, because was it going to be taken into consideration during mitigation of sentencing, whether you are South African or not, after committing crime? That will never be taken into consideration. What is taken into consideration is the seriousness of the crime committed, and therefore will make sure that those people are punished accordingly. But you can't brush all of our African brothers and sisters as people who are engaged in drugs. Because Julius Nyerere, Nkwame Nkrumah, Muammar Gaddafi, Robert Mugabe, all of them will be turning in their graves that Africans, that they seek to unite and liberated from colonialism for a very long time, have actually turned against each other. And at the center of such a contestation is to work for a white person. When you say they are taking our jobs, can I have my water there? When you say they are taking our jobs, who created those jobs? It's a white man. So you are actually fighting to work for a white man. None of you has ever argued that they've taken the banks, they've taken the land, they've taken the industries, they've taken anything except that they've taken jobs. The argument of jobs, it's an argument that comes from people who dream small. Their biggest ambition is to get a job. So you can't be in the EFF and your ambition is to get a job. In the EFF, we seek the ownership of strategic means of the economy. Instead of being employees, we want to be the employers. And then the white people must work for us because we are the owners of the means of production. So, why fight to serve the master when you can become a master through a political program that seeks to reclaim that which belongs to us? It doesn't matter who comes from where. Every sick person must be helped. After the MEC of Limpopo said whatever she said to a woman who was sitting on a dead bed, what followed was the blocking of people from entering hospitals if they didn't show their identity. And what was unfortunate was the whole incident. But they stopped a vendor-speaking woman and declared her non-South African because she's dark. And on the basis of that, they could not allow her to get the services she's paying tax for. So if they are coming for dark-skinned people, it's no longer xenophobia. They are now going to the stage of tribalism because the people generally in the north are dark, and therefore the north will be the first to be attacked, and then from there they will go and attack the Zulus and all of that because they will say you don't belong here. So it moves from xenophobia into tribalism. So it ought to be stopped at the level of xenophobia before it becomes tribalistic. Once they are done with tribalism, then they are going to regionalism. You're not from here. You are from that side of the country, that part of the country. You can see with the ANC nominations now to conference, there is no province that is not nominating itself in the top 6 because they've degenerated to politics of regionalism. They've degenerated to the politics of tribalism, that they cannot see other potential leaders outside themselves. And that's what our society will become if we're not careful with that type of conduct. Our struggle is a struggle for socialism against capitalism. Our struggle is a struggle of black consciousness against white racism. And therefore we do not have a struggle of anti-Africans and anti-blacks. And if you do that, you do not belong to the EFF. Comrades, we must conscientize society, but we cannot conscientize society with people who are not conscious themselves. And therefore, you must become the best in society that is appreciating the conditions that characterize the living conditions of our people in those communities. Once you have an appreciation of such, and that you have come to understand the founding manifesto of the EFF and all its schools of thought, Fanon, Marx, and Lenin, and even beyond that, you ought to read material in defense of capitalism, because you can't fight against something you don't know. You ought to know what is capitalism and what are the dangers of capitalism and how will socialism and ultimately communism resolve these problems when we defeat capitalism. We need highly politically charged and highly politically conscious leadership of the EFF. And one of the understanding of such leadership is the leadership that understands that forming an organization, you don't form it for yourself. It is not a foundation. It's not Nelson Mandela Foundation. It's not Julius Malema Foundation. And it will be an irresponsible statement for anyone who was there when we formed the EFF that we formed it and therefore they hijacked it. That is the most politically illiterate person, that we have never formed an organization that will belong to us until we die. Lenin teaches us about democratic centralism, that the decisions of the higher structure are binding on lower structures. But before those decisions are taken, we ought to canvass the views of the people on the ground before the higher structure takes place. So we did that when we were conducting the BGAs, the BPAs, consulting our people and our members as to what should become the decision of the Provincial People's Assembly. And members through consultation told you that Dunga and the collective will be the leadership of the EFF. Now, we come at this level, at the highest level, after consultation with the lower structures of organization. We now take a decision. This decision we have taken, it's final, because it's a decision of a higher structure which is binding on all members of the EFF and structures of the EFF in Gauteng. Contestation does not mean enmity. Contestation means that our members are spoiled of choice and they need to choose anyone they so wish to choose because there was many options and many people who could have chosen from. And anyone who see contestation as a declaration of enmity, that person lacks what we speak about when we say the leadership at this level must be leadership that is politically conscious. But those who get elected, they too must never think that they've emerged victorious against their enemies, because there is no enemy agent inside this hall. We are all members of the EFF. Be careful to want to be elected with your friends, because that is the beginning of killing of the organization. The organization does not work on the basis of friendship. If you elect friends and tomorrow you go to a social gathering together and the following day there is a PCT and there are no minutes, you are unable to call them to order because you were together last night in the same place and therefore they could not produce the minutes. You don't have to love a person with capacity who can discharge this responsibility honestly and through dedication. Whether you love the person or not, the question should always be, does this person love the EFF? Can this person be the best secretary? Can this person not compromise and bring the organization into disrepute? Does this person understand and appreciate and live and practice the revolutionary code of conduct of the EFF? If he ticks all the boxes, you might not like him, but he's a good leader. And therefore, you ought to give that person an opportunity to lead you, even if you don't like them personally, even if you are not friends with those people personally. We must refuse this thing of relegating women in the EFF into positions of deputy, secretary, and treasurer. We must make sure that as we grow the organization, we appreciate that women can actually lead like men because they are at the same level. Women are not sub-members of the EFF. They are full members of the EFF. So, we ought to find it in ourselves to have an appreciation that the liberation of women will be led by women themselves, because part of our engagement and struggle is to liberate women. So, you can't liberate women in their absence. They ought to be there, they must be visible, and they must lead from the front. But we must throw it back to women, because it's a conference like this where women constitute 57, if not 60% of the conference. If you come together as a caucus of women and say we are strictly going to elect a top 5 of women alone, and we're going to make sure that these men come and beg us to include them. Why can't women on their own unite and use their majority to undermine an agenda that seeks to make women sub-members of organization? So, if we elect women as treasurers and deputy secretaries, you must know that the women out there will never have confidence on our leadership. That this is the organization that says it will fight for us and liberate us, but it can't do it internally through action by electing women into leadership. There is nothing we can do, by the way, it's democracy. But this democracy must be exercised by people who have a clear political consciousness. because we've seen in the recent past that people celebrate the death of a woman who presided over the genocide of black people in Africa and in South Africa in particular. The wars of resistance were against the British. And these people who are here today is because they were doing what they did to us through the blessings of this woman. You can't say we don't want borders, we don't want colonialism, we want a decolonized education. May her soul rest in peace, in one sentence. That is a political confusion. The position of the EFF reawakened the whole world that these are the crimes that were committed by these people. And those who commit crime, even in their dead, we must never celebrate them. We must remind them that they've stolen that which belongs to us. So there's no one who's going to declare flags to be flying at half-mast here in South Africa. If he there makes a mistake of declaring that the flags must fly at half-mast, we're going to look for those flags and make them to fly high, because we'll never allow the celebration of our colonizer. People must do the right thing when they are still alive, so that when they are dead, their good will follow them. It can't be that you want to become a good person and be praised because you are dead. We must never allow that. We remain a conquered nation, and that conquering comes from our colonizer led by Britain and the Queen's family. And we must not be ashamed to say we do not mourn the death of a person who supported slavery of our people. We do not mourn a person who died wearing our stolen diamond on her head, because that will be tantamount to celebrating criminals who die in possession of stolen goods. So they must know we are not with them, and we are not even going to shed any crocodile tears. We are not going to be pretentious. And if Cyril has given them condolences, he has done that condolences on behalf of himself and his nose, not the people of South Africa. So, when you meet here, I think, DP, perhaps you have been able to provide solutions through the commissions where we went, because commissions are not just a passing time program, are very serious, because that's where we discuss the future of South Africa and the EFF in particular in small groups. Why do we do that in small groups? Is to allow even those who are scared to speak in big crowds to speak in small groups and share their ideas on how we can better the province of Gauteng. How many million? 7 million people who are not registered to vote here. 7 million people are not registered to vote. But what is even more disturbing is that in the 1 million member campaign, your regions have not met their targets. So perhaps you are not meeting target because you are scared of quorum, that if you recruit more, you might not reach quorum. So quorum is gone now. When you go back, you don't have an excuse. You must make sure you recruit the real numbers to reach the target, because it is Gauteng that is going to deliver South Africa. All of us must know that Gauteng is what will liberate South Africa, and without a grounded EFF that is based on the quality, highly recruited members, then the organization will not have the future. We asked you when we started, do not do signature campaign, because it undermines the growth of the organization, and it's unable to tell us if we are strong there or not. People go and do signature campaigns and thought we will not know. The system exposes them, and we have since suspended them. It is those people who commit treason in the EFF by lying to the organization and creating an impression that the organization is alive when it is not alive. So you always have to be honest to each other, to yourself, and give the honest report to the leadership so that they can see how do we intervene. We have a problem of corruption in South Africa. And we've started to have a problem of corruption in the EFF now. That when people are sent to the leadership of the EFF, who are leading at regions or provinces and all of that, people will demand money in exchange to helping those people with whatever problems they are confronted with in those municipalities. We can never fight successfully against corruption if we in the leadership of the EFF are going to accept bribes and become part of palace politics and corrupt elite of South Africa. You ought to stay away from corrupt people and do not take unsolicited, even solicited gifts from dodgy characters who may be in trouble tomorrow, and because they are in trouble, they will drag you into those troubles and you will drag the EFF into those troubles. Corruption must be fought from inside here, internally in the EFF, if it raises its ugly head. We must chop the neck of corruption in the EFF if we are going to win corruption outside the EFF. The whole councillors, is it Imfulen of CDB, where a man is hired to be a researcher without an interview, without the caucus knowing, without anyone in the leadership knowing, but this is the researcher of the EFF. You can see that there is a corrupt individual who has been engaged in a corrupt program to corrupt the organization. And we will not tolerate such people in the EFF. Well, we don't care how powerful you are and who are your friends in the province or national or whatsoever. Once you engage in such shenanigans, you will regret the day you joined the EFF, because we will not allow corruption in the EFF. We will never be led by corrupt members of society. We need to recruit the most cleanest members of society. We must be amongst us here. There must be highly respected members of society, not crooks that are rejects of other political parties, and they find the EFF as if it's a heaven of corruption. You will never defeat Pala if you are Pala of the EFF. So you can't demand that leadership must be held accountable and the standard must be very high. But when it comes to you, you are unable to accept that you are engaged in shenanigans. Fighters, we must not allow the president of this country to lower the standards of accountability. When it is Malema's turn, the standard of accountability is high. When it's Zuma's turn, the standard of accountability is high. But a man can put money in the mattress and then go and speak there in the ANC conference that those are the proceeds of auction. And then after some weeks, he forgot the first answer. That's how liars work. He says, no, there is a man who came, unidentifiable man, who came with cash and gave to my domestic worker. He was buying buffaloes. What happened to the auction? were given two different answers on one question. The question has not changed. The Reserve Bank is unable to tell us. SARS is unable to tell us. NPA is unable to tell us. The Hawks are unable to tell us. And if institutions of the state are unable to give an account as to what happened, then this is a confirmation that we are presided by a gangster. We have become a gangster state, and that's how gangsters operate. You steal the stolen good by another gangster, then that gangster is coming to look for you without reporting you to the police. That's what he did. He came with illegal money. The criminals stole the money. He now organized his gangster to go and look for those other gangsters who stole his stolen goods. So, if we have gone to that level where that gangster of the president even uses the resources of the state to go and look for another gangster, we are becoming a lawlessness society. And when we become the lawlessness society, the most victims of a lawlessness society is women. They are going to be raped, they are going to be killed, and there will not be anywhere to go to report such nonsensical acts, because those who are perpetuating those things will have the highest form of connection. There is a gangster in Venda there called, what is his name? In Toyando, they even have a club, nightclub, Jerusalem. Jerusalem, gangster, also printed T-shirt and donated money into the CR17. A well-known gangster, that he was prepared to even take the money of a well-established gangsterism in Toyando, and even printed money to support CR17 at that time. So if he can accept such monies from such people, it means it's not different from them. They are one thing, and that's how they survive. Comrades, I've seen some of you are flirting with journalists. You're flirting with very dangerous people. That you can go and talk to journalists about us. Journalists are members of the EFF, some of them. You are their leader if you are at that level. And then you become a source to a member, a leader who reduces himself to a source. And then in the Sunday world, they don't call you a source, they call you a mole. A mole, because doesn't want to be identified, because he will be victimized. A mole. You are flirting with journalists is going to destroy you as a leader of the organization. We are no friends with journalists. Neither are we enemies with journalists. Journalists, without telling you who gave them the story, you just read the story, you will know where the story comes from. Because if they write about all of us, including you, the source, and then they write very bad about all of us, and then they leave you in the same story as a good person who's being denied this and that and that, clearly it's you who told them the story. That's why they can't write bad about you. I'm not bragging about it. I started doing this thing at 9 years. I'm now 42. It means I've got 30 years doing this work. You just arrived now in politics. Your first political party was EFF. And then you get excited by journalists. You go and talk about me. And you think I will not know who speak this nonsense about me. I will know. And your punishment will be a very painful, small pain that will be forever. Because once you fight the EFF in the papers, you must know you have declared war against us, and we will win against you. You will never win against the organization. We want this province to be united. And therefore, those who go around wanting to divide it through the newspapers and through WhatsApp and Facebook and all manner of things, you will only have yourself to blame. If you are not elected and you have been writing nonsense about the EFF on Facebook, it's good you are not elected, because members have seen that you do not have the discipline of being elected as a leader. What type of leadership writes about organizational internal issues on Facebook when there is a platform like this where you can express yourself without fear or favor? And even if it's going to take time for conference to come or whatever, there is no problem. Hold on into that issue. We are not going anywhere. We are here to stay. When that time comes, you will be able to raise that issue internally. Comrades, you might have expressed a view in this conference through who you preferred as a leader, or through a particular issue you raised in the commission. It got rejected. You are the one who's going to appreciate and accept this leadership and go and announce it out there as if you supported them. Why? It's a discipline of the organization that I have expressed my views. They were defeated. I still hold those views. I will continue to advance those views internally until I've persuaded a lot to agree with what I actually stand for. Many might have tried to stand before and lost, and today they are elected. That's how the organization works. When it doesn't elect you now, it doesn't mean you are a reject. It just means we are not ready. Not you. You are ready. You can even feel it in your blood. That's why you are going up and down. No problem. You are ready. But we are not ready to be led by you. There is no problem in membership expressing itself in that way. So, do not impose yourself on the people. The people know their leaders and they will choose them accordingly. There are a lot of people that, would have left the EFF, some former leaders and some former councillors, who, when they were not nominated as councillors or got defeated in conferences, they completely withdrew from the organization. We deliberately went to fetch them right at the door of exit and said to them, you are making a terrible mistake because you are a good leader of our organization. Do not become impatient. So this organization will never eat its own children. Once you see this sea, the Red Sea rejecting a person, you must know that we cooked a stone in this pot, and then we cooked the head of this fighter in this pot. The stone became ripe first before the head of this fighter. So we can't do anything with such people. When you leave, it's back to the ground. There is no time to rest. It's to make sure that the leadership of the EFF recruits and make sure all those 7 million unregistered voters, they vote. Because now we're recruiting 1 million. Next year, we are going to do public training of those all 1 million members of the EFF. After that, they are the ones who are going to do door to door with their gadgets, going to register people in their own homes, because you can register online. We go with our own resources, register those people. And we must register as many as possible. So meaning DP, the target of 1 million is not done. When it's finished in December, we announce how many members we got. We now give you a new task. This region has got a responsibility to register so many members before end of December. So many voters, so that we know how many voters have we registered as the EFF directly. Because now we are surviving through other people's voters. Those people who are on that ballot, on the voters' roll, are not our people. They were never registered by us, but we expect them to vote for us. The only way to be voted is by taking those who love you to go and register. And you know, I've got so many people on the voters' roll that I've directly registered myself. 2024 is going to be a repeat of 1994. It's going to change the political landscape in South Africa. Politics of South Africa will never be the same after the election of 2024. We will not win them in 2024. We win them before 2024, so that when we enter 2024, we know that we are indeed cruising nicely. We must not enter 2024 panicking whether we'll sustain our percentage, whether we'll grow our percentage. No. It must be, we have registered 5 million voters. When we count our votes, we are going to count from 5 million upward, because this 5 million were sure about it. We recruited it, we convinced it, they said they will vote for us. You can't recruit 1 million people who are paying 10 rand and fail to register 5 million people who are paying nothing. They are in the comfort of their homes. You just go there, talk to them, convince them, and make them they register from the comfort of their own homes. We need an activist EFF, an EFF that lives amongst the people, that knows that its shield against the enemy agents and enemy forces are the masses themselves. We do not want palace politics. We do not want to become an ANC light. We cannot replace a tendency with a tendency. At the level where we are, you can't be a member of the PCT who must be convinced to go and do the work of the organization. Why were you accepting to be a member of the PCT and the RCT? Leaders who lead don't lead through occupying comfortable seats. Leadership is a permanent trouble to you because you want things done and done the correct way and done to the best of your ability. So, comrades, you are the ones who can make sure the EFF becomes a powerful force here in Gauteng. ANC won the previous elections in Gauteng with 50.1. They are leading the legislature with 1 member. There is no miracle that is going to happen that will make the ANC to gain more. Because even after 50.1, they came again to lose the metros. So it's a sign that Gauteng is available, is waiting for you. And if you are going to be lazy, you accept to be a leader, and you are told to go and launch a branch in Hammanskraal, Mara, you are a member of a PCT. A PCT member can't say a place is far, referring to a place in Gauteng. There is no far place to a provincial leader in Gauteng. All of them belong to you. You are going to service all those places. If you didn't know, it's not too late to resign, so that we replace you immediately while we are still here. So fighters, let's unite our movement. Let's become one thing. We only have ourselves. You can't say you will fight Ramaphosa and expect nice things from the media or the establishment. Once you say you don't want Ramaphosa, Ramaphosa must go. you must know you declared war against the establishment. And it's going to come very hard on all of us. But we must not be scared. Because to die for the truth is what will make you a martyr. You must never die a coward. You must die with your boots on, and you must always be on the side of the weak and on the side of the masses. So we know very well that in the EFF we speak the truth to power, and we do so unashamedly. We will get this president to account, whether they like it or not. Don't think that when they protect CR17 and say they are sealing CR17, it means they are protecting Ramaphosa. They are not protecting Ramaphosa. They are protecting those whites who are on the CR17 list, who donated to Ramaphosa. They don't want those whites to be known that they are the ones who put money there. They have no time for a black skin. If there were no whites in the list of CR17, that list was going to be released at any time. For Ramaphosa to even think that whites love them is misleading himself. They don't love him. They love themselves, and they know that they are in those lists of CR17. Rupert organizes a golf day here in Mpumalanga annually. He's got a farm there called a golf estate. If you go to that golf day of Rupert, you will not find less than 15 judges going to play golf with Rupert on that day. Golf is a very difficult sport. They pair you with someone. So depending on which judge Rupert wants to talk to, he looks at them and says, pair me with this one. It depending on how many holes are there. You are going to walk with that person the whole day. Rupert walking with 2 judges at the golf day, the whole day. What are they talking about? So judges must stop attending events and golf days of rich people, especially the white monopoly capital that owns everything in South Africa. The judges must stop networking and inviting politicians into their houses. What do judges want from business? Because you must choose if you want to be a judge or you want to be a businessman. Look at what happened here on a civil case against Sibanye, Waters or whatever, and Ramaphosa by Marikana widows. Judge Lamont was a shareholder in the Sibanye Waters. When that was brought to his attention, he said, I have resigned. It doesn't matter whether you have resigned or not. You've got a particular special relationship with that company which is manipulating our people. So judges have got shares in big companies that are exploiting our people. Why are they judges? Why can't we pass the law that blocks judges from becoming businessmen while they are judges? Because judges are paid for the rest of their lives, even when they go on retirement. We still give them a salary. When they die, if they are married, the surviving spouse still continues to get half of what that partner was getting. What more do they want? Barinyakai, kauri, rebafa chelete until the grave. Even when they are in the grave, we still give them money. Yet they are available to take more money in the form of shares and then tell us that they are neutral. You will never be neutral when you are in bed with monopolies of South Africa. Remember, they are not in a shareholders of some BEE company. They are shareholders in big companies, in the banks. A bank just takes a decision to close your account because they wrote a wrong story about you. There is no judgment against you. Nothing has ever been proven. A bank closes your account. You go to a judge. Little do you know that the wife of a judge is holding the shares in that bank you are litigating against. If we didn't have a clever lawyer like Dalimpof who exposed that this guy has got shares in this company, that judge was prepared to preside over a court where he knows very well that he's conflicted. How many of them do that? There is nothing wrong with constitutional democracy. I don't agree with parliamentary democracy because politicians will always be politicians. We've got a very good structure, 3 arms of the state, the legislature, the executive, the judiciary. They must monitor each other and make each other accountable. There is nothing wrong with the 13 judges at the Constitutional Court. We must make sure that no wrong judges get to capture the Constitutional Court, like they are trying to do with Unterhalter. There is a white man called Unterhalter who represented Ramaphosa at Marikana. Every time there is a vacancy at the Constitutional Court, he applies because he wants to go to the Constitutional Court. As to why he's doing that, even when he fails to succeed, I don't know. But the reality is, he's a lawyer of Ramaphosa. When they say a person is a lawyer, they mean he's your friend. Because when you get into trouble, the best person to spend more time with is a lawyer. That lawyer is your friend because when you tell him or her the story, you must tell the whole story and the whole truth so that he can find a way of navigating your story. So how can Ramaphosa tell that guy about his life and then later become president and want his lawyer to become a constitutional judge? There's nothing wrong with that court. Let's make sure we save it and protect it from being captured by Ramaphosa loyalists, by loyalists of capital, but by women and men who are neutral, who don't rule in favor or in fear because the person who's appearing before them is a president. Mukwevani has won a case. I've never seen anything like that. I don't know if it's governed by hatred or what, where you win a court case at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Before 12 o'clock, a leave to appeal has been filed. Because once they file leave to appeal, it suspends that judgment that favors Mukwevani. Meaning she can't go back to office until the appeal is heard. Before 12, same day. But they will never deliver any service delivery like that anywhere in 24 hours. But when it comes to defending Ramaphosa, by 12 o'clock, leave to appeal was filed. And then Koleka wrote a letter to the public protector, don't come to the office, there is leave to appeal. So, we must make sure that these shenanigans are exposed and our courts are not captured. They don't want the EFF to participate in the JSE because that's where the EFF exposes the corrupt, exposes the racist, exposes the friendship of these judges and business people and politicians. They say no, politicians must get out of JSE so that it can only be professionals who appoint judges. But they don't say the president must not appoint judges, because JSC recommends to the president. You don't want politicians here, but you want politicians at the end of the product to be the one that signs to appoint a judge. They must choose what they want. We can't be politicians when we are in the JSC, and then once the job is done, and then they find us in the office of the president, we are not politicians, we are a president. The reality is, they don't want the EFF. They are masquerading as if it's an intellectual debate as to what becomes the role of politicians in the process of selection of judges. Why? They want to capture the judiciary. There's an organization called CASAC. There's an organization called Helen Suzman Foundation. There is an organization called OUTA. They are looking after white interests. If a decision does not go in their favor, then they take it to court, because they know they've captured the courts. When you arrive there, you will not succeed against them. Someone was telling me yesterday about Trunk of SC, that he has never lost a court case at the Constitutional Court. He's a white judge. And even where he loses, there are no punitive costs against him. It's just normal costs. But we know that there are black African judges, lawyers, SCs, who when they appear, you know before they open their mouth that these ones are going to lose because they are so and so. And these ones are going to win because they are so and so. We don't want a judiciary like that. We want a judiciary that is blind, doesn't see what is before. It can only hear arguments. And on the basis of those arguments, they can take a decision that is not biased to anyone. So we are fighting this battle at the JSC. We are fighting this battle in Parliament to defend the independence of Parliament and the independence of the judiciary and the independence of Chapter 9 institutions, which the ANC wants to destroy and put under their control. Look at the Reserve Bank. The most professionally run institution has now been compromised to a point where it is unable to answer a simple question. Do you know of the dollars that passed through you into South Africa? They ask a wrong person. The answer is yes or no, because they just put an ID number there, and then they will say, we never had such a transaction with this person in the last 5 years or so. No, they write long letters of explaining themselves. Where is SARS? Where is NPA? Where are the hogs? Where is the Office of the Public Protector? All institutions that we thought are going to be collapsed under Zuma are being collapsed now under Ramaphosa, who was elected in the ticket of accountability and transparency, who always says to us, I will answer any question, I'm not scared of anything, I've got to hide. When he arrives in Parliament, he says, I can't answer that question. At a place where he's supposed to answer, he says, I've answered somewhere else. You don't answer anywhere else as a president except in Parliament. That's why there is a provision made that over this period, the president will from time to time come and answer questions in Parliament, because those who came before us knew that Parliament must hold the president accountable. He's now refusing to answer to Parliament, and ANC fools are clapping hands, celebrating a person who undermines the independence of legislature, which must hold him accountable. Fighters, we want to thank you for your discipline, which was demonstrated here, and we also appreciate the level of maturity that was displayed by those who had the interest of contesting for this or that position. Because many people, after losing, they behave in a particular manner. We haven't seen that yet. The EFF is the only organization, by the way, which can have a conference where all its members attend and no one is in court to try and interdict the conference of the EFF. That's how much we love our organization. I was told that SABC doesn't cover us the way they cover ANC conferences. They just come and take a snippet and leave. They must know that we have been here before and you are taking us back to where we were, where you choose ANC over news. What must be reported is the news, not which party. Is this party newsworthy? If the answer is yes, you must do it. Now I hear that there is a new guy there called Moshweshwe Munari who says he will never cover the stories that are against the ANC. If that is his attitude, you must tell him that his days are numbered at the SABC. We will never allow anyone to come and micromanage the SABC in favor of any political party. We don't care about these others, whether they cover us or not. But the SABC must cover us. It has got no option but to cover us. Why? We have worked for it. We are a party in parliament. We are the third largest party in parliament. And the SABC can't behave as if they don't know that. So you are starting Lea Toma. Yele Tomang. Legacy Fage. Karbati Lebabanchi before you, and they left without saying goodbye. So if you are going to start on that wrong footing of undermining the EFF and taking cameras of the SABC to conferences of drunkards who don't know why they are meeting, who have no mission to save South Africa, but you can't take them to where there are sober people debating the future of South Africa. You are declaring a war against wrong people. And we are prepared to engage in that war to defend the SABC. It is not a state broadcaster. It's a public broadcaster. There is a huge difference. This conference sitting here, there is a huge public interest in Gauteng as to what is the EFF going to come out of that conference with. And therefore, you are denying our people access to information because of partisan politics in the SABC. Please be warned. We will not allow that nonsense to repeat itself. Let's go on a rehomuchi, rebiva, lanana, rechavantwa. Ntweri chabang kofenywa. We don't want to lose when we engage in a war. We always want to come out victorious. So don't start that which you will not win. So fighters, let's make sure that when we leave here, whatever differences we had are going to end when we exit that door. Once we sing the national anthem, once the chairperson gives acceptance speech, we're done. We now have leadership, and we must all, without failure, rally behind that leadership. Thank you very much. My water.
All right, well, that was EFF leader Julius Malema. making his closing remarks there to the delegates at the party's third provincial People's Assembly in Gauteng, the EFF in Gauteng, of course, this weekend electing new leaders. Now, in his closing remarks, Malema made some scathing, utterances towards the ANC. He's also touched on how the EFF itself will not allow corrupt members in the party, irrespective of the power in which they wield. He also says that they want politically grounded leadership that will tackle challenges in the province specifically, and of course across the country. He's also touched, of course, on the upcoming general elections of 2024, saying that 2024 will be a repeat of 1994 and it will change the face of political face of South Africa. He went on to touch on developments, of course, of the suspended public protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane's court matters, then delving into judiciary concerns that he says he's spoken against, some of the things that they are seeing within the judiciary, saying that there is a need to address the judiciary and that judges must stop attending events of rich people, saying that the party is fighting for the independence of parliament, the party is fighting for the independence of the judiciary, and of course all the chapter 9 institutions. Well, our journalist is on the ground and has been listening to that speech and of course following all matters related to that Gauteng election that has been unfolding. Of course, we know that the Ekurhuleni regional chair Nkululeko Dunga is now the Gauteng chairperson. So we'll unpack all of that a little bit later on in the program.